This is USCHO Weekend Review. And here is your host, Ed Trefsker.
Welcome to USCHO Weekend Review from Monday, November 10th, 2025. This podcast is sponsored by the NCAA Men's Frozen Four, April 9th and 11th in Las Vegas. Visit ncaa.com/mfrozen4 for your tickets. I'm Ed Trefsker alongside Jim Connolly and Derek Schooley. Great weekend of hockey and some sweeps for a change instead of a lot of splits. But let's look at number one, Michigan State. And we don't have the poll out yet while we're recording, but I'm going to guess that they're going to be close to, if not completely, unanimous number one. They defeated Penn State 2-1 in overtime and then smacked them 5-0. Trey Augustine gave up just a single goal for the Spartans. They've won 7 straight, tied for first in Division I right now since they lost to UNH on opening night.
This is a statement weekend, in my opinion, for Michigan State. It's a tough game on Friday night that they had to survive and get the win in overtime. And, credit to being able to pull out that game at home, but then to bounce back and shut out a really good offense in Penn State and limit the offense, really. They did not get the usual ridiculous number of shots that a Penn State team does. So I feel like Michigan State just went out and told everybody, hey, we're a good team. We're a really good team. And, we're playing a very good team. And we I don't want to say crush them because of the overtime game on Friday, but they
what
handled
a great
them.
Atmosphere with every time Gavin McKenna touched the puck, they booed. Every time he left the ice, they cheered. Obviously, a little animosity that he picked Penn State over Michigan State, and that just shows the excitement of college hockey and really neat atmosphere. I tuned in to see a little bit of it around our games, and that it just shows you the hype of college hockey hasn't died down to have that kind of game and to have Michigan State on top. They're definitely going to be the number one team in the land this week.
And maybe a harbinger of things to come in college hockey as those big stars spend a year or two with some college teams. I'm certain that's going to attract a lot of attention.
Well, they just showed that, obviously they're showing Porter Matone over Gavin McKenna. They're showing signs of NIL money. It's just a neat little rivalry. It's something that to bring a lot of attention to the game, and NHL Network covered that. You could see highlights all over the place, and yes, you're right. Something to bring more attention to our game, which is much needed.
And college hockey fans are very well researched these days too. Well, let's go to the NCHC 3 series sweeps. Number 9 Denver on the road at number 4 Western Michigan, winning 3-1 and 6-3. This tells us a little bit about both teams. Denver, we were questioning a little bit a week or two ago, and now Western Michigan, that's got to raise some doubts.
You used my quotes on the other day and the quick hitter on the kind of highlights about questioning Western Michigan, and I got a couple alumni sent that to me via text, questioning our alma mater on their defense, and obviously the 6 goals, and we had some questions about Denver too. And I say, yeah, we always question Denver, and then they wrap off about 8 to 10 to 11 games in a row undefeated, and here we go. Denver goes and wins 2 on the road, and Western gives up 6 again. They're going to have to get right in a hurry. Both these Western's going to have to get right in a hurry, and we'll see if Denver goes on another heater like they normally do this time of year.
I mean, I don't want to make big statements this time of year. I really don't, but I'm going to. Right now, as we look at this, and we're going to talk about Minnesota Duluth, we're going to talk about North Dakota, all sweeping this weekend. Those 3 teams, if one of those teams, or let's just put it this way, if the national champion does not come out of the NCHC this year, I will be shocked. I know we've talked a lot about the Big Ten. We know that Hockey East always has some strong teams. I still look at the NCHC. These teams are going to be so battle tested when they get to the NCAA tournament. They are going to have beat one another up. NCHC team that gets into the NCAA tournament, they're going to have a chance to win a national championship. It's that simple. This conference right now, the hockey that is being played in the NCHC is just so impressive.
You mentioned Minnesota Duluth, sweep over St. Cloud State 4-0 and 3-2 in overtime. Minnesota Duluth was ranked number 7 coming into the weekend. They're going to be number 3 in today's poll. And they weren't even in the poll at the beginning of the season. What a turnaround for Scott Sandelin's squad.
Yeah, we'll get into them a little bit more in the second half today, but this weekend series is just another one. You know, you can do it in non-conference play, but once you bring it back to conference play and you start pulling off 6-point weekends, and this one ends up being a 5-point weekend because you lost a point for the overtime win. But I just look at this Minnesota Duluth team, everything that they've done out of the gate here is so, I mean, it's maybe we should have had higher expectations for them, but the last 2 seasons didn't give us that reason. I love what they're doing here.
You don't want to make major statements, Jimmy, but you did. I'm going to say this is the biggest story of the year so far, Minnesota Duluth. I'm going to make a major statement since we're in a major statement. Who saw this coming? Nobody did. 10-2 at this point. Nebraska, Omaha coming home, but then they've got 4 tough road games going to Colorado College and Western Michigan, basically to end their. Then they got Arizona State to end their first half of the year. We'll see really where they are the next 8 games after that.
But if this team got to the break with 15 wins, would you be surprised?
Yes. Would I mean, right now, would I be surprised? No.
Yeah.
But at the beginning of the year, absolutely. You'd be surprised. I mean, people in Duluth were they not calling for Scott Sandelin's head? They shouldn't have been. No way should they ever be calling for Scott Sandelin's head. But people were, which is crazy to even think of that with what Scotty's done at Duluth. But they were, and now it's like, yeah, look what a good. He's not only a great person, but he's a great coach. And now, would you be surprised at 15 wins? Not even, maybe.
You know, a couple of coaches have also talked to me about him being one of the smartest coaches too.
I would believe that. You know, I just listened to him, you know, in some of his philosophies. You know, he said something a number of years ago. This is going back way before the portal came around. And he was just talking about players that leave programs early. And he said, there's only 2 reasons to really leave a program early. One is because you're ready for the next level. And he's like, in those players, you just got to let go. And the other one is because you hate the coach. You know, and I think he was trying to make the point. They didn't have a lot of players transferring and they were winning national championships. And I just think he wasn't trying to pump himself up as much as saying, with all the movement that's out there, sometimes coaches just don't get along with their players. I think that, you know, when you go into, you know, what makes Scott Sandelin a great coach, I think it's because he can relate to his players really well.
Funny guy. We had him. We were at Mike Schaefer and I were on the rules or the championships committee in Buffalo, and you'd never like teams crossing each other, but they were the number 1 seed. They had the Sabres locker room, and one of Schaef's and my jobs were to make sure that when the teams cross, we let one team go. And he was always, you guys are the highest paid crossing guards in the history of crossing guards, and most wins in the history of crossing guards. And he's got a great sense of humor, just a great guy. And I'm glad to see him having success right now.
And just a side note before we get to the other sweep on the weekend, I think a story for us to look at, or a topic down the road, maybe in a year or 2 even, is a retrospective on who was helped and who was hurt in going into the transfer portal, because not everybody finds out that the grass is greener. Sometimes it's full of weeds and they get lost in them. Well, let's look at number 8, North Dakota, coming into the weekend. They swept at Omaha 7-2 and 4-1. And I think one of the big stories with North Dakota is, other than an exception up in at Clarkson in New York State's North Country, is they've really been putting together some offense.
I mean, when you're scoring 11 goals in NCHC play in a weekend, that's pretty good. And giving up only 3, I think it's the the goal differential right now for North Dakota, they look as strong as you could imagine. It's why I just feel really bold on the NCHC this weekend, because I look at some of the teams that are on the back end of these sweeps: Western Michigan, St. Cloud State, Omaha. I look at all three of those teams and think they're really good. So now you've got three teams that in Denver, Duluth, and North Dakota that pull off those sweeps. I guess it's made me a little bit bullish on this NCHC conference right now.
We're really surprised about that North Dakota. I mean, North Dakota had a little down year last year, doesn't make the tournament. I mean, and now they're back up there. I mean, yeah, whether you thought we should add a coaching change there or not, with Brad leaving and Dane coming in, you knew that they weren't going to be down for that long. And here they are, basically getting back to the top of the NCHC. And like you said, this league is tough. This is a gauntlet. You're running a gauntlet. And I heard it the other day, and we're talking about a Division III league in our office, about a Division III league, and we're talking about some teams in Division III hockey. We're like, this is basically the NCHC at Division III, and that's the best Division III league. And I mean, this is a challenging league. Every night, there's no off nights in this league. The SEC of college hockey, and you got the Big Ten. The Big Ten's the Big Ten, and here you got. This is it.
Well, let's take a look at Hockey East. A couple of teams made their way back to 500 with weekend sweeps and kind of righted the ship after raising some eyebrows earlier on. Number 12, BU over Merrimack, 3-2 in overtime at home and 5-4 on the road. And then BC sweep over Vermont, 2-1 and 5-0. How important was it for these two programs to get these sweeps this weekend, Jim?
Critical. I wasn't all that concerned in the long term about either of these teams. They both are good. We know that there's talent there. I think BC may have taken a small step back in terms of talent from last year, but that just shows how strong of a team they were. BU has the talent. They're just not playing defense right now. So they get the 2 wins against Merrimack, but I'm still a little concerned. They had leads, a 3-0 lead, and then a 5-2 lead against Merrimack, and it ends up being a 5-4 game. They got the overtime win on Friday. That's a good win. You needed to get that at home. But right now, I'm still a little bit concerned for BU. BC, they go up and they do what they had to do in Vermont. It's a good Vermont team. They squeak out a win on Friday night. Saturday, it becomes a little bit more handy. Maybe a bit feels like an easier win. I guarantee it wasn't. But these two teams, they'll be okay. I'm waiting for either of these teams to show me that they're going to be great. BU probably has the roster to be great. BC, maybe. They've got some injuries right now. We'll talk about that on Wednesday. But I think that right now, either of these teams are playing good enough hockey, but they've got to just find that consistency.
Let's get back to 500. We talked on our Wednesday about these teams being at the bottom of their overall records, and they're both back to 500 now. And BU tied for first, but obviously Northeastern has games at hand. Maine right behind them. Boston. It's so tight as far as the points go, but they got what they needed to get, and that's points. And they got trying to get right. And this is the time where you need to stick around in the race. You can really put yourself behind the 8 ball by losing a lot of points at this time of year. You need to stick around and make sure you get right and get on a streak. And they're sticking around and getting right, which is what you need to do at this time of year.
Northeastern had a couple of non-conference games against Stonehill, 2-0 and 4-2. A Stonehill team that is probably overlooked and underrated by people. David Berard just put together a competitive team there. But the Huskies now 7-1 and 0.
Lawton Zacher. That's all we can talk about. Lawton Zacher. He has been fantastic. The transfer goaltender from Brown. He's changed this Northeastern team. They're playing more confident. They have some really good players from the USHL. I look at that as a good pipeline of offense for this team. But on the other side, Lawton Zacher. I mean, he got shutouts against Denver, against Boston College, against Stonehill. 3 out of 4 games he ended up with shutouts, and then gave up 2 on Saturday.